Hey everybody, it's me Michael with Recreate Church coming to you live from the rainforest of Brazil. No, seriously, it's just my front yard, but it feels like it's never going to stop raining. I'm so excited today to share this message with you. I'm going to sit down with Nick Dowdy and we're going to talk about some tough things, resisting temptation. I wanted to give you a heads up because some of the subject matter is a bit grown up, so if you have some small kids in the room, you might want to find them something to do for the next little bit. But I think for most of us, this is going to be really enlightening. It's going to be a big help to you. Miss you guys. Can't wait to see you. And enjoy this conversation. Hey, everybody. I am so happy to be here with Nick Dowdy. Say hello to the World Wide Web.
Hello, World Wide Web.
I've known Nick a long time. One of the greatest privileges of my life was to baptize Nick along with his dad and his brother and to kind of be a part of some ministry with him. And I've asked him to come and be a part of this conversation today, to do a little something different here. Some of you guys will know Nick from the Battleground Ministry. He's really involved in that, and kind of been a while since I've got to see with my own eyes because we got this, global pandemic and all. How's the pandemic treating you, Nick?
Oh, I'm ready for it to be over. It's been rough.
Yeah. Spiritually speaking, I feel like I've grown a lot.
Yeah.
I have also grown a lot in my clothing sizes. So it's a lot of growth in the pandemic. I was doing good, folks, until my wife started baking bread. So when you see me in person, you're like, oh my gosh, Michael got fat. It is my wife's fault who bakes delicious things, and she's taught my daughters to bake delicious things. So I'm going to pass the buck on to there and not take any responsibility for my own actions. Well, now I'm getting convicted, so.
Maybe a little bit.
Okay, I'll take some.
Little bit
I'll take some, okay. So we've been talking about character. People are impressed with things like looks and money and swagger.
Yes.
Is it swag? Is that what you kids are saying these days? Is it just swag?
I wish I could speak to that, but I'm not really part of that generation
Nick has so
anymore.
much swag, he doesn't even know. People are impressed with stuff like that, but God is impressed with character. Character is who you really are on the inside. Character is who you are when you think nobody's looking, when you're not putting on a front. We live in a world that is set up for you to present an image on social media that your life is like this. But character is who you really are with all of that stripped away, no filter, like for real.
Yep, especially recently because all of our interactions are on social media.
Yeah, so you can sort of fake who you are so easily, but you can't fake that before God. Now, character is really important for us because I'm convinced that when it comes to God blessing us, character creates capacity. God is looking for some people he can trust with the blessings he wants to give. I don't know about anybody else, but I can tell you in my life, there have been times where God wanted to bless me. I'm sure of it. Wanted to kind of take me to the next level, wanted to trust me with more, but I didn't have the capacity of character to handle it. Mm-hmm. And when he started giving me like a little taste of kind of like next level stuff, I made a horrific mess of it. And I don't want to do that anymore. I want to be the guy who God can trust with anything he wants to give, that God wants to, he's up kind of watching. He's like, okay, I'd like to take Michael here, but he's just not mature enough for that. Yeah. I'm convinced that sort of thing limits us so much. You see, we've got to have the ability to handle our blessings. Blessings are like dynamite, okay? Can you see his face? He's laughing at me.
Just
blessings are like dynamite because in the hands of a person with the proper experience and training, dynamite can do incredible things. Blow a hole right through a mountain to make a tunnel. But you give someone who doesn't have the proper experience, doesn't have the training, doesn't know what to do with dynamite, it's going to blow something up. Yeah. It's going to blow them up, and it's going to take people with them, and blessings are like that too. I've heard stories about people who win the lottery and end up with just wrecking their life and wishing they never won it. Yep. So we've been talking about character, and we've been going through this teaching by James, who was one of the leaders in the early church. James was the half-brother of Jesus, really interesting guy. And we find his letter towards the end of the New Testament. It was probably the first part of the New Testament to be written, even though it's kind of towards the back in the way the book is organized. And so far we have been looking at, we've looked at 4 character traits. The first one was endurance. The second one, wisdom. then faith, and then last week I preached to you live from the chicken coop in the Shockley homestead about humility. So get this though, Nick. Okay, I was planning out this series months ago, several months ago, okay? No idea kind of that we would be in this position in our nation right now. So when you hear about the character trait we're going to talk about this week, you're going to like, oh, he planned this because of what's going on in the country. No. I had no plans for this except that several months ago, God kind of put this on my calendar to be talking about this right now. God knows the future. I don't.
Yeah.
So today we're talking about the character trait of resistance. And I was sort of afraid to bring that up, Nick.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Because these are very, it's so much political turmoil in our nation right now, and everyone seems to have an opinion and kind of all different sides. Everybody, no matter their political persuasion, feels like they need to resist something.
Yep.
There's people coming over here saying, well, we should resist this. And then there's people on the other side, well, we should resist their resistance. And it's just a big mess. And I'm telling you, if I didn't love Jesus, I would not be talking about this today, but I need to talk about it because we need to know. The sort of resistance that I want to talk to you about today is, it is not political, but it is powerful. It's a kind of resistance that has never been very popular. As a matter of fact, if you practice this kind of resistance, people might think you're kind of lame, Nick.
Oh, yeah, I've been there.
Yeah. If you're trying to resist, in this way, people are going to be like, why?
Yeah.
It's boring,
Yep.
But I'm here to tell you, it will impact your life, okay? There's a very eccentric poet from long ago, Oscar Wilde, who wrote in one of his compositions, he said, I can resist anything except temptation. You like that?
Yeah, that's excellent. Very ironic.
I can resist anything except for temptation. And that feels kind of personal,
A little bit.
Yeah. As humans, we seem to be wired to resist a lot of things. Yeah. We resist when we see something that doesn't seem right, something that we just feel is wrong. We want to resist that. And yet we seem to struggle so much to resist the one thing that we maybe need to resist the most, temptation. Okay. Our culture uses the word temptation there's a reason why resisting temptation is treated like it's lame, because people talk about lame temptations like, I'm so tempted to eat a lot of chocolate. Okay. That sounds like a real trial, big guy. Try to, eating a lot of chocolate. Whoo, hope you can make it through that. But temptation in the real world is something so much more. Temptation is ultimately a test of character. Yep. Temptation is your opportunity, from a biblical point of view, temptation is the experience where you're put in the position of choosing God's way or some other way. Choosing between being faithful or not, or choosing, let's use a very unpopular word for it, Nick, choosing sin or not.
Yeah.
Sin's not a word that's very politically correct.
Nope.
Not these days. But let's get real about something. Okay. Do you think that God gave us the regulations in His Word just because He likes to be in charge?
Me? No, definitely not.
No. He's not just throwing His weight around. I mean, would you agree that the way God says to live, if you do that, you'll probably stay out of trouble?
Yeah, I definitely believe that.
A lot less pain?
Yeah.
See, we got to be careful not to reduce what God has said to us just to this list of do this, don't do that. It's more like, think you're on a curvy mountain highway, and this curvy mountain highway is called life, and God's word is the guardrails that keep you from flying off the curvy mountain highway to a fiery death in the valley.
Yep.
That's a little dramatic, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
God wants to keep us from crashing and burning our lives. Yep. So we're talking about temptation. Nick, have you ever had any experience with some folks who, or of people who face temptations that really can be totally destructive? I mean, have you seen the destruction that can happen?
Yes. very recently, alcoholism has been one that I've seen, and it is definitely a poison. I know for myself, because talking about others, like you can see it, but for myself, pornography, up until about a year ago was quite a temptation, like very overpowering all of the time. But thankfully, that isn't as big of a deal, but still definitely a temptation. And I can say personally that porn just like destroys everything.
Right. Well, that's the thing is, so much of these things we're tempted to do are just blatantly destructive.
Yeah.
They bring so much shame and so much guilt. They wreck relationships. You know, I've got some very, very good friends of mine who struggle with some substance abuse. And they're like, man, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be this person I become. And yet the temptation is so powerful. And, well, let's see what James says about it. So I have my Bible here. And
I got mine here.
You got your Bible app. So that's not the book of James. We're going to be in the book of James here, chapter 1, verses 12 through 15. I'm reading NKJV, so your translation may vary. Blessed is the man who endures temptation, for when he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life, which the Lord has promised to those who love him. Let no one say when he is tempted, I am tempted by God, for God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he himself tempt anyone. But each one is tempted when he is drawn away by his own desires and enticed. Then, when desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is full grown, brings death. That's pretty heavy stuff. So, James starts out by saying, blessed is the man who endures temptation. Temptation is that situation that tests our character. Sounds like a totally negative thing, right?
Yeah.
But it can be positive, because temptation is also an opportunity to prove, you know, that you can stand strong. It's kind of like a test in school. You know, I'm so glad that I finally graduated back last year. Finally, in like December, I finally graduated.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm going to get any more degrees. And if I start talking about it, someone talk me out of it, okay? But tests were they were an opportunity for you to fail the test, but they're also an opportunity for you to pass the test. James says, you know, you can endure temptation. Now, on some level, temptation is an opportunity to choose. And where do choices take place?
In the mind.
In the mind. I believe you and I were talking about before about, you were saying the mind is the battlefield where we fight the war against temptation.
Completely. I know for myself, especially with pornography, like it is such a big, huge battlefield, because it always starts with that thought, like, or seeing an image somewhere, and then that image just like makes your thoughts spiral. And if you don't stop them from spiraling, when that temptation first arises, it just does what James says. It leads in birth's death, you know, eventually.
Oh yeah. I mean, it starts in the mind, and the trick is, can you end it there? Can you win that battle early? It sounds like what you're saying to me is, if you can somehow change that channel early on, like before it has time to set up, then you're so much better off, you know. There have certainly been times in my life, a lot of times, like all the time, okay? Man, I got 3 kids. I tell myself every day, I'm not going to be that dad who loses his temper with his kids. And then I go home to where my kids are. It's totally cool when I'm at work. And then I go to the place where my kids are. And my kids are great kids. They really are great kids, but they're kids. And I find myself, you know, I don't always have the strength to resist that temptation. See, we never know how strong the temptation is until we really decide to fight it. Okay. Nick, what's your favorite animal? I've been wanting to know.
Ooh, man, you put me on the spot. Favorite animal.
Okay, let me help you with this.
All right.
What is an animal that you would say is very strong and dangerous?
Strong and dangerous. First thing that comes to my mind is a lion.
A lion.
Yeah.
I like lions. Lions are great.
Yeah.
Because our Lord's the Lion of Judah. So, yeah. And there's that Newsboys song, Roaring Like a Lion?
Yes.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, so a lion. Okay. You could use your phone right now and Google information to find out how strong and dangerous a lion is, correct?
Yes.
So you could find out how strong a lion is. And you would have someone would say the bite force of a lion is this many newtons or pounds per square inch or whatever.
Yeah.
But there's really only one way to have first-hand knowledge of how difficult it is to deal with a lion, and that would be to do what?
Deal with the lion.
To fight a lion. You would totally know then how strong a lion is. So when it's attacking you and trying to defend yourself from it, you would know. Okay, you been watching any weird shows during quarantine?
No.
You don't have to say. You don't have to embarrass yourself.
Nah, not really.
You look like a Tiger King kind of guy to me, but maybe you haven't watched that. Okay, I have not watched that. I will say, it has been watched, but I have not watched it. So we were watching this one show. Okay, this one's not too bad. It's about people who own exotic animals, and oh my goodness, what a surprise! The exotic animal turned on them. It's like people who had pets, lions as a pet, and like, oh, the lion attacked or the tiger attacked. How surprising is this? Who could have predicted this? And the 20 other episodes where an exotic animal attacked. This one guy had a giant snake. I'm not really a snake guy.
No,
not really. I'm not scared of snakes, but I don't want a snake. But this guy, hey, some people out there are snake people. God bless you. You take care of the snakes. You can have them all. I don't want any of them. This guy had a snake, like a big boa constrictor. And here was a guy who had some substance abuse problems, and he got wasted, and he passed out, and he wakes up, and the snake had coiled around him and was squeezing him to death, and he was trying to fight the snake. And he didn't get away. I mean, that was the end. He died. I mean, it's pretty horrible.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can look at a snake. This guy, I'm sure, felt like he knew how strong this snake was. But he never really knew until it was coiled around him, and it was almost too late. Temptation is a lot like that. When it's coiled around you, about to get you, then you sort of feel the strength of it. Theoretically, speaking here, kind of in this space, we can talk about temptation as, oh yeah, we can beat temptation. But when you're in that moment, when your mind has been attacked, then you know the strength. When it's trying to wrap you up, when you're trying to fight it off, and you've kind of talked about that already. It is tough.
Yeah.
In those moments, it's so tough. Aren't you glad James didn't stop there?
Yes.
He didn't say, hey, everyone's going to endure temptation. He talks about it in very positive terms. He says, blessed is the one who endures, who resists it, who holds out, who doesn't cave in. There's a blessing. And he continues in that same verse, and he says, for when he's been approved, he will receive the crown of life, which the Lord has promised to those who love him. Okay. I realize translations may vary, but what I'm reading here is, Nick, he does not say if, he says when.
Yep.
When you overcome temptation. He's working from the understanding that temptation can be overcome and that it's going to be all right, that we can make it.
Yep.
You can make it, Nick. You can make it.
You can make it, Michael.
Me?
You.
Even me?
Even you.
Whoa. Hear that? That's a lot of pressure on me now. Thanks, Nick. Do I have to do this in my own strength?
No. Thank goodness.
Holy Spirit will help me?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I don't think you could do it on your own strength.
Definitely not. But we can step into the blessing that is given to those who overcome temptation. We can resist. Okay, get this. When I hear the word resistance, you know what I think about? I think about my favorite film series. I know you think that my favorite thing to watch is My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic.
Totally. That's exactly what came to my mind.
Do I look like a brony? Not really. Don't have enough neck beard for that. Got a little neck beard going.
I thankfully shaved mine earlier. So
no, Star Wars.
Yeah, that's exactly where my mind went, and I was like,
Resistance.
I wonder if we're on. We are same.
You're a Star Wars guy, right?
Oh yes.
You got a favorite Star Wars character?
Oh yeah.
Jar Jar, right?
Oh no.
Who's your favorite Star Wars character?
Easily Darth Maul.
Darth Maul. Double-ended lightsaber.
Oh,
kind of do that for you. Yeah.
Silent type.
Yeah,
right up my alley.
He's a cool guy. Maybe this is slightly cliche, but I'm a big fan of Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader, because of the redemptive story arc.
Yeah.
I really, really like that. That really speaks to a spiritual part of me, that someone can be so messed up in every conceivable way and can be brought back to the light. I mean, that's the way I see Jesus as. Now, we look at ourselves and rarely do we recognize how messed up we are. It's easier to look at someone else's life and say, oh, wow, they're really messed up. They need Jesus so bad. But it's hard to see that in the mirror. And kind of like the whole Anakin becomes Darth Vader thing speaks to me, because I'm like, hey, today I'm Anakin. Tomorrow I could be Darth Vader. You know, all I got to do is make this series of choices that leads me down this path. I'm so glad that God is there to help me stay in the light, and if I go away from that, to come back. But anyway, Star Wars, the word resistance brings that to mind. Resistance. So the resistance is, if you're not a Star Wars person, you should be.
That's what I was just thinking.
You should be. But anyway, not everybody's in the movies, and that's totally fine. But what you really need to know for this moment is the resistance are the good guys, okay?
Yeah, from a point of view.
The good guys,
no, they're the good guys.
They certainly consider themselves to be the good guys. And, in the story arc, they're the good guys.
They are.
Don't get too deep on here.
I'm not. It's just, I'm a Star Wars fan, and that's just how they are the good guys.
They're the good guys.
They are.
They're the good guys. And they, known as a resistance, a rebellion, okay, they're trying to fight against the bad guys, which is the Empire, the First Order, you know, the bad guys, the dark side. And they're always outnumbered. Always. Totally outnumbered, totally outgunned. The cause always looks completely hopeless.
Always.
And yet, they don't give up. They continue to resist. And in the end, the Death Star blows up. Or when they make another movie, the other Death Star blows up. Or then later on, they make another Death Star-like thing, and it blows up. Or then they'll just put little Death Star beams on ships. Spoiler alert, if you haven't watched episode 9. And those will blow up too. So, every time.
Moral of the story, they blow up.
The big, bad, awful thing blows up in the end. Because, and I love that. Would you say that in real life, there are some temptations we will face that seem overwhelming, seem irresistible, and yet we are able to resist them through God's strength?
Yes. 100%.
100%. I was hoping you were going to elaborate there, but...
Oh, I can.
Okay, elaborate, man.
I know for myself, with pornography, like I said, like the past year, I've seen the pattern in my life change, but for years, and you knew me in those early years that I was a Christian, and I was growing in my faith, and I was learning, like, pornography was the thing that if I felt like if I could overcome it, that a whole new world would open up to me. And I put a lot of my worth and stock in overcoming that, and it never really worked out. And it just felt like this Death Star that was looming over, Alderaan, getting ready to destroy the planet. And it was just sitting there. And it just never felt like there was ever going to be an end to all of the weight and shame that came from having that struggle in my life. But praise God, like, I endured, and I was still growing in my faith. And as I continued to grow, things shifted, things changed. I grew in my sonship, and like became deeper in my relationship with the Father, and that brought healing to that area of my life, and a whole bunch of other things that go into that. But like at the root of it happened. The Death Star finally blew up, and Alderaan was still there. So like, yeah.
That's awesome, man. I think I've had a lot of different Death Stars in my life. But kind of like the thing that keeps coming back to me is this weird combination of perfectionism and discouragement. Like, I want to do everything just right, but I can't, so I get discouraged. I want to keep the people in my life happy with me, but you're not going to keep everybody happy all the time. That's not even a reasonable thing to hope for, and you get so discouraged. And I'm like, man, is this ever going to go away? This is ever going to go away. So I want everyone out there to know, I'm going to talk to you guys, that you need to know this. even in those moments when you're resisting and you're resisting and you're resisting, and finally, your resistance breaks down and you give in to whatever temptation, don't give up. The fact that you're fighting at all is a big, huge deal, especially if you're fighting something like depression or suicidal thoughts. Fight until you fall, but don't stop fighting, okay? Just because you made it this far and then you fell, don't let that stop you from keeping on fighting, because get this, okay? You keep on fighting the temptation, calling on the name of Jesus, growing and learning, and then someday you don't fall.
Yep.
Someday that you'll be able to get through the period of temptation and you didn't fall prey to it.
Yep.
And then the next time that temptation shows up, you're like, wait a minute, I don't have to do this. No matter this thing that's gotten in my head, this discouragement or this temptation to look at stuff I shouldn't look at, or this temptation to get angry or to fear or worry, or whatever your thing is, you can look at this and say, wait a minute, I don't have to do this. But you got to keep fighting. You got to keep pushing. And James talks about this amazing reward for those who resist. It's the crown of life. Someday maybe I'll do like a whole message series on that, of the crowns for a believer. But basically what you need to know today is a crown is like this special honor for believers who have struggled through and haven't given up, whether it is facing temptation or trials or persecution. It's kind of like the crown of life is for people who have hung in there when it would be easier to give up.
Yep.
So there is a reward. James doesn't leave the subject just then. He talks about something interesting to me. He talks about the mechanics of how temptation works, where it comes from. And one thing he's very clear, verse 13, he says, let no one say when he's tempted that I'm tempted by God.
Yeah.
Because God can't be tempted by evil, and he doesn't tempt anyone. There's kind of like that image of somebody in the middle of a moral dilemma, and they're like looking up at heaven and say, God, why would you tempt me like this?
Yeah.
Okay, that's like a movie trope, but that's not a real thing.
Yep.
God totally does not want you to sin. So he is not going to dangle that in front of you.
Nope.
He's not the kind of God that says, hey, man, don't eat any cookies, and then he bakes some chocolate chip and he kind of waves it under your nose, say, hey, don't take one of these. Don't do it.
That'd be tough.
Yeah, that would be tough, but he's not like that. He's not going to tempt you. So where does it come from? And he explains, verse 14, but each one is tempted when he's drawn away by his own desires and enticed. Then when the desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And sin, when it's full grown, brings forth death. Okay. We think of temptation as this thing that works outside in. We encounter this thing outside of us, and it reaches into us to grab us and make us do it. You see that provocative image, and it's kind of the idea is that, it reaches inside me and makes me lust or makes me take these next steps or, whatever it is, this thing on the outside, these people in my lives, they're being frustrating, and that frustration is reaching inside of me and make me burst out in anger. Or you can see, you look and you see on social media that person, you can't stand that nasty, awful person. And it looks like everything is going their way. And we think that reaches inside of us and pushes the jealousy button.
Yeah.
But that's not really how it happens according to James. James says that it doesn't work outside in, the temptation reaching into us. James talks about the temptation working inside out. That this thing inside of us reaches out to the temptation and we grab it. There's this desire in us that reaches out. Do you think that's pretty accurate?
Oh, yeah.
You felt that?
Oh, yeah.
So it's so weird. That's why some things tempt some people and not others.
Yep.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say you would have a very hard time tempting me with Diet Mountain Dew.
Oh, same.
Diet Mountain Dew. If you can drink Diet Mountain Dew, you should not be afraid of anything because that stuff is vile.
I would say any type of Mountain Dew, but that's just me.
I'm not a Mountain Dew kind of guy. So if someone says, hey, Michael, what's the Mountain Dew? I'm like, I'm good. Now, you could tempt me with Dr. Pepper.
Oh, yeah. Mine's sitting right over there.
Dr. Pepper. You could tempt me with Dr. Pepper. And if someone says, It's 11 o'clock at night, and that's late for me now, Nick, because I'm an old guy now. 11 o'clock feels late to me. It's like, hey, you want a Dr. Pepper? I'm like, I probably shouldn't. It'll keep me up, and I need to get up like early in the morning. I'm probably still going to drink that Dr. Pepper because that's my temptation. You see, it's the desire in me reaching out to the temptation. It's not reaching out to the Mountain Dew because that desire's not in me. So when we're experiencing temptation, it's the thing inside of us reaching out. Now, we should probably be careful if we know that our triggers are certain things. It'd be good to avoid those triggers. You know, if you realize your temptation is anger, and you can do some things to avoid situations that put you in a bind and make you that kind of trigger that anger response. Yeah, do what you can. You know, if your temptation is to view images that you shouldn't look at, man, whatever you can do to kind of shut that off, you know, you shut it off. You do what you can. Here's something I do want to say to everybody. You need to know that simply experiencing temptation is not a sin itself.
Yes.
That just was experiencing it.
Yeah, that was exactly one of the things I was like, I didn't have this in my notes, but this is exactly something that I wanted to like touch on.
Take it away, man.
Cool. So to sort of go back just a second, we were talking about how the battle is in the mind, and it ties into this temptation thing, because a lot of the times, as soon as we're tempted, we already feel defeated. We already feel like we've committed the sin, and so we already start to feel the shame. We already start to feel the guilt. And the only way for that to not happen is to have the renewing of our mind and to realize that that's not what that is. And that simply because we're tempted doesn't mean that we've sinned. Jesus was sinless, and yet he was tempted. Very much so.
Yeah, so, I mean, here's a guy who never ever sinned, and he was tempted. He was systematically tempted by the devil in the desert. Check that out. It's Matthew chapter 4, I believe. You know, for 40 days, you know, the devil like stayed after him. Did he sin? Nope. Was he tempted?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably more so than we'll ever experience in our entire life, but he held through.
I hope we don't get singled out for the direct attention that the devil himself is working on us. Maybe he does sometimes, but we know for a fact that Jesus was. So yeah, that's a big deal. It's not being tempted that's the problem. It's when you allow the desire in you to reach out and take that temptation. Okay, to put it in terms, I'm going to regret this, Nick. I can already feel it. To put it in terms that Gen Z would understand, and to maybe a lesser extent, kind of the millennial generation too. I'm sort of the oldest of all the millennials, you know. I'm kind of in there, and you're kind of maybe towards the tail end of that a little more.
Yeah, I think so.
So to kind of put it in Gen Z terms, which my kids are sort of in this generation, the problem doesn't start when temptation tries to slide in your DMs. Is it too much? Was this too much?
I thought about dropping the mic, but I decided not to.
Please don't drop mics. Microphones are expensive pieces of sound equipment.
Oh yeah, that's
don't do that. That's a thing that's on movies. Don't actually do that. You'll get your well, how can I say this? You'll get some percussive maintenance to your backside if you drop a mic. Okay,
won't happen.
You get your butt kicked. Yeah, don't do that.
But that was my reaction.
But you know. A lot of us are on social media, and some random person might send you a message, okay? And unfortunately, for a lot of younger people, especially young ladies, they get sent some very inappropriate messages, like some random guy, like, hey, beautiful. And it's like, you know, I have two daughters who are sort of in that age range, and I'm like, man, you got to be so careful. So it's not when you get that first message from someone who's bad news, it's a problem. It's when you respond to it. Best thing to do, hey girl, he's bad news. Just erase that DM, that direct message. Just erase it. He's bad news. I'm telling you right now, somebody listening to this is asking, should I respond to that? And the answer is
no.
Okay, let me put on my voice of God voice for a second.
Thou shalt not answer the direct message.
Did that work? That was good. I don't know what God really sounds like, but in my head, he sounds kind of like that.
I mean, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah, like James Earl Jones.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Morgan Freeman. Yeah, don't answer that, because That's the problem. See, the problem is not when you get that first message from that random guy. It's when that first message becomes a conversation.
Yep.
And then it just downhill slide from there. And you get yourself in trouble. Yep. That's the way it is with temptation. It starts with that, boop, oh, there's a message. So far, you're so good. It's when you answer it back. Like, no. James uses some really uncomfortable language here. I don't know if you thought about this. He talks about the desire in us, metaphorically conceiving a child with temptation.
Yeah.
You know, he does say when desire has conceived, I mean, he's using the language of conception here, and gives birth to sin, that's a child. That's uncomfortable for me.
Vivid.
Okay, it's very vivid. I think that's a generous term you're using.
Yes.
Vivid. You know, it's, how can I put this? Look, the desire in us reaches out to the temptation on the outside, and a baby is conceived, and that baby's name is sin. Look, some people say all babies are pretty. All babies are cute. That is a matter of opinion, okay? I'm not going to say that babies aren't cute, but I'm going to tell you, this baby is ugly.
Yeah.
Sin is an ugly, ugly baby.
Yep.
And it grows up to be something even uglier than it started out to be, okay? Yep. It grows up to be death. That's what happens when the desire in us gets with the temptation on the outside. It grows up. Sin is conceived, and sin grows up to be death. Okay. Ever seen anybody flirt with temptation?
Yes.
Absolutely. You been that guy?
Yes.
I've been that guy. I'm ashamed to say it. I don't want to be that guy, but I've been that guy. But here's the problem. When you flirt with temptation, oh gosh, please, Lord, forgive me if this is wrong. I can't think of a good way to say this, but James sort of said it for me. I'm just going to use some more recent terms for it. If you flirt with temptation, and you flirt long enough, you're going to get knocked up by temptation.
Yeah.
And I know that's a bad way, and probably somebody just changed the channel. I'm so sorry. Kind of. Well, no. I mean, James said it. He just used different terms. So, yeah, here's the thing is, temptation wants to conceive a child with the desire in you, and temptation is a terrible baby daddy. Is it too much?
No, it's right on. It's
uncomfortable. It really is uncomfortable. Yeah. But as uncomfortable as it is, it's still true. That is what temptation wants to do. It wants to conceive something in your heart that is going to be ultimately destructive for you. Yep. So this whole deal about resisting temptation, man, it's not just about being that prudish guy or gal who never does anything wrong and looks down on everyone else. No, it's about saving yourself and the people you care about from destruction. Yep. It's about rescuing your most important relationships from being wrecked, because it will happen.
Yep.
It will happen. See, that's the deal with temptation. Starts out looking like a good time. It looks like that person who, oh, wow, it's nice to get attention from this person. Yep. But it ends up in destruction. You know, temptation looks like it is going to add something to your life, but in the end, it always takes life away. It's heavy.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you're here to share this with me, Nick.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. Truly. There really is no sarcasm on that.
Okay, I appreciate that. I don't always pick up on sarcasm too well. So.
I've been well versed in sarcasm thanks to my father. So I
I think we've all got some of that in us. Wouldn't it be nice though if temptation wasn't an issue? I mean, we know that that resistance is a character trait, and God wants character. And you might say, well, why doesn't God just stop us from ever being tempted? And that sounds good, doesn't it? But the problem is, God does not want to take away our free will. That's not something He's willing to take away. Yep. If God stops you from ever being tempted, then you never actually have the ability to choose right from wrong. You're just, you're this person living out your programming. Most of us don't like the idea that we're just robots living out some kind of programming. Nope, so as much as I would like to say, God, I don't want to deal with this temptation anymore, and I have said that audibly and often, God, please, I don't want to deal with this temptation or that temptation. He's probably not going to remove the temptation, but what he can do and what he will do is grow that resistance in us. Yep. So when the temptation comes, we can do, as James says, when you endure temptation, when you're approved, you'll win that crown of life. There's more blessing in the end. We'd rather not endure temptation, but having endured it and resisted it and lived through it, you come out on the other end stronger, yep. Or you should. So he doesn't promise a temptation-free life, but he does promise something. And I know you like this verse, and I want you to talk about it. I'm just going to read this verse and sort of let you have it for a minute.
Cool.
It's 1 Corinthians 10:13. It says, the temptations in your life are no different from what others experience. Or as kind of the King James I grew up with, you've only been tempted such as common to man.
Yep.
It's common. You're not being tempted in ways that are unique to you.
Yep.
Or that no one else has faced. But God will not allow the temptation to be more than you can stand. When you're tempted, he will show you a way out so you can endure, a way of escape.
Yep.
And that stuck with me through the years. When you're tempted, there will be a way of escape. There's always a way of escape. There has to be, because he promised it.
Yep.
However, it's not always easy to see the way of escape. Sometimes the way of escape is just straight running away.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Joseph in the Old Testament,
one of my favorite examples.
Literally runs away from this lady who's coming on to him because he knows she's bad news. He runs away. So tell me, Nick, okay, way of escape, it's hard to see. Do you have advice for people who maybe are facing temptation and they're having a hard time seeing that way of escape?
I hope I do. We'll see. I know for myself, dealing with temptation of pornography and different things throughout my life, I would always find myself, as the temptation is there, then looking for the way out. Then, like, in the moment, as things are, hitting the fan, looking for the way out in that moment.
After it's already escalated.
Yeah. After your mind's been attacked, after I've already seen that image, the desire inside of me is reaching out, the flirting with the temptation is happening. That is when I'm, like, starting to try to find the exit. And that doesn't work almost ever.
Right. It's calling the fire department after your house is halfway burned down.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Instead of already having a plan of action in place, you attempt to, like, flee the emergency as everything's already happening.
So you say a plan in place.
Yeah. That would be my advice, is to, because the thing is, if we're honest with ourselves, like, we know what it is that we struggle with. We know what it is that the enemy tempts us with on a daily basis. For myself, it was porn. And so coming up with a plan of action during the, like, if you'll put it this way, the baseline before the temptation comes up and, like, everything starts to happen, during the down times, to have and think about and pray about a plan of action during that time, rather than trying to figure it all out in the moment. And instead of, like you mentioned earlier, we can sit here and talk about how easy or how much we should be able to overcome temptation, because that's all it is temptation. And it's easy to do that whenever you're not in the moment, but as soon as the moment's there, it reminds me a lot of this example that I had thought of. Like, when you go to a movie theater, they always tell you where the emergency exits are at before the movie starts and before there's ever an emergency. Hopefully that'll never happen, but the point is that you know where the exits are before you need them. And it's no different with temptation, no matter what kind of temptation it is. If you don't already know where the exit's at, you're in the middle of the chaos, in the middle of the emergency, in the middle of the temptation taking place. It's not going to be easy to find that exit.
Right. It's hard to keep your head in the heat of the moment. You sort of almost, okay, look, I don't know if it was done when you were in school, but, like, we had fire drills.
Yeah.
Stop, drop, and roll.
Yeah.
Probably never in my life will I ever have to stop, drop, and roll. I hope.
Yeah.
But if I catch on fire, you know what I'm going to do?
Stop, drop, and roll.
Stop, drop, and roll. Because it's drilled into my head.
Yep.
We need to kind of have an idea, okay, these are the things that are a problem for me. How can I make a plan to deal with those things?
Yep.
I have a friend of mine who's talked about, his struggle with alcohol. And sometimes if he's having one of those days, he'll take a different way home to avoid the store where he'll buy his alcohol at. It's like, okay, I know today is not a day I need to go that way. I'm going out of my way, you know, so I'm not putting myself in that situation. Exactly. You know, it might be that you need to put down the TV remote or go for a walk. You're kind of like, okay, I feel myself starting to, you know, starting to lose it.
Yep.
I'm about to become that guy I don't want to be. I'm going for a walk. One time, this was so weird, man, years ago, and I was getting ready to go on a mission trip, and I had no, like, money for a mission trip, but I was committed to go. And I had also no job, which is a job is a thing that you do that they give you money for.
Normally.
Yeah. And it was like, I was getting so mad. And I went out and mowed my yard in the dark. And you know what? Right out there, I kind of had to be in a different place right then because my head was in the wrong place. Guess what? And I just kind of broke down before God right there. And he spoke to me in that moment, not like an audible voice, but it was like, okay, this is what you need to do. I'm like, okay, God, I'm going to do things your way. Yeah. I don't want to be that guy who's not doing things your way. And guess what? Like when 3 days my mission trip was funded, I had a job waiting on me when I got back from the mission trip, and I had a temporary job.
Nice.
So I could work a little bit leading up to it. So I'm telling you, sometimes we just need to remember there is a way of escape.
Oh, yeah.
It's there. Try to think about it ahead of time if you know what the things are, so you know where the emergency exits are.
Yeah.
Ahead before the emergency.
Yep.
You know, even if you never face it. So, man, it has been good. It's been good, my friend.
Yes.
Thank you for talking with us about this reality. I know there's a lot of people who face stuff that maybe they feel like they can't talk about at all.
Yeah.
So I appreciate your honesty, man. I really do.
And for you or anyone watching, you know, like, you can message me on Facebook. I'll message you back as soon as I can. I'm not great at it, but there are a lot of other things that we could talk about that I've experienced that may give you more insight or more, like, ideas on how to resist temptation, because we could talk here for forever. And
we could.
That's, you know.
We could, but we've been at this a while. I appreciate you guys being with us, you know, through the internet, through podcasts or through YouTube. I really want us to be back here live again soon. You know, I so badly want to have, like, live in-person meetings again, even though we're going to have to do a lot of things that maybe are a little bit uncomfortable. But if that's what it takes, I'm fine with that. Yeah. And if this won't last forever. When we start back up, I'm honestly hoping, Nick, I'm hoping for next Sunday. The last Sunday of June, where we're recording this. It's kind of a couple weeks away. Yeah. Last Sunday of June is what I'm really hoping for. Watch the website. That's recreatechurch.org. When we do reopen, you know, we'll have to take some precautions. We'll have to wear masks. We'll kind of have to have some sense about it. Not everyone's going to be, lots of people are going to be like, oh, man, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do it either. But if that's what it means, I'll swallow my pride if I get together with God's people. Same. So it'll be 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. We'll have 2 service times, which we'd planned to do anyway, and this just gives us an opportunity to kind of spread people out some more. Yeah. And someday we're going to be back to our normal approach, normal as we get, you know. This is not a sort of a normal, typical church environment. We're kind of not business as usual anyway, but I look forward to the day when we can have coffee again and Hardee's biscuits like we do every day, and, you know, hugs and fist bumps and all of that. Thank you for joining us. Next week, be praying, okay, that the next Sunday that follows the drop of this message, we can be back together. That's what we're really hoping for. Watch our website. We'll catch you next week. See you later.
Bye, guys. Dick. Feels good to be here.
Yeah. See you.